Jai Jai Shri Radhe. So Vaishnav Jai Shri Krishna. Continuing with the stories of the 252 disciples of Sri Gosaiji, Doso Bhavan Vaishnav. Today is day 229, and beginning with Varta 235, the story of Khatahariya, a Kshatriya from Gujarat. This is the devotee of Tamasi disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Shyama Gop, who manifests from Jashwant and is thus a personification of his divine loving sentiment. He was born into a family of Kshatriyas in Gujarat and had adopted the lifestyle of a highway robber even as a child. He stole from anyone whom he met. Such were his bad deeds. He had a gang of 300 men. They rode horses and would surround their victims on all sides and rob anyone on their path. Khatahariya was the leader of this gang. Once Sri Gosaiji was travelling from Gujarat to Vraja. Khatahariya and his 300 men surrounded Sri Gosaiji with the intention of robbing him. Sri Gosaiji had about 20 wagons. The gang stopped all of them. One of Sri Gosaiji's men stood on each of the wagons, and it appeared to the robbers as if each of those men was a lion. Khatahariya came close to Sri Gosaiji's chariot and had the vision of Sri Gosaiji as the Supreme Lord reigning there. He threw down his sword and prostrated in front of him, saying, "O Maharaj, I am an unrighteous man, full of offence. Please purify me. Apart from yourself, I know of no one in this whole wide world who could uplift me." Seeing his humility, Sri Gosaiji looked at him and, recognizing him to be a divine soul, initiated him with the Lord's name. Khatahariya took his leave from the gang members and stayed to travel on with Sri Gosaiji. They came to Gokul. Khatahariya then again supplicated, "Please grant me the Brahmasambandha initiation." Sri Gosaiji told him to fast for a day, and the next day initiated him with Brahmasambandha in front of Sri Navneet Priyaji. Khatahariya began to experience the Lord's pastimes, and he composed many poems about them. Such was Sri Gosaiji's grace upon him. Once Khatahariya went from Gokul to Srinathji Dwar. That day was Sri Krishna's appearance day. He sang a celebratory song before Sri Govardhanaji, Pad Rag Sarang. This is a most auspicious day in Sri Yashoda's village of Meherana. Every type of instrument is playing, all are celebrating, no one has stayed at home. Cowherd lads are filling their shoulder pots with yogurt, and the cowherd lasses are dressed up beautifully. These gopas and gopis sprinkle the yogurt all over each other and even douse each other with pots of it. Gargamuni then performs the naming ceremony, and Nanda Baba rewards him generously. The poet Khatahariya now sings the purifying glories of Sri Krishna, whom everyone knows to be the Supreme Lord. Khatahariya composed many such songs, and Sri Gosaiji was very happy to hear them. Through Sri Gosaiji's great grace, Srinathji began to let Khatahariya have his direct experience. Khatahariya never ever left Sri Gosaiji's side. He spent his whole life in close proximity to his lotus feet. Bhav Prakash. The tale teaches that firm faith and exclusive shelter in Sri Gosaiji can lead to the great grace of Sri Thakurji, granting his direct experience. Thus concludes Varta 235, the story of Khatahariya, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnav. There is no end to his tale. Continuing with Varta 236, the story of Brahmadas, a Gaurava Kshatri from Gopalpur. Bhav Prakash. This is a devotee of Sattvic disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Manamohani. She always shines with the mood of union with the Lord. Therefore she is always contentedly happy. She is part of Sri Yamunaji's group of gopis. She is the daughter of Jaswant Gop, and is thus his manifestation and a personification of his divine loving sentiment. He was born into a Gaurava Kshatriya family in a village called Gopalpur, which is just beyond Raval. From his childhood he liked to serve saints and holy men. He would take bread cooked in his house to give them. He sat and often slept close to them and discussed the Lord's pastimes with them. He lived like this until he was 20, when his parents died. He then kept company with a man who was a devotee belonging to the Gaudiya tradition. They became great friends. Brahmadas stayed with the Gaudiya man, who soon moved to live near the Manasi Ganga lake in Govardhan. Thus Brahmadas began to live in Govardhan. He would go daily to have the holy sight of Sri Govardhanaji. On the 8th day of the dark half of the month of Posh, Brahmadas returned from his visit to Srinathji and came to Govardhan. That night, Sri Govardhanaji granted him his divine vision and commanded him to go the next day to Sri Gosaiji and take initiation from him. The next day, Brahmadas did indeed go to Natjidwar. The day that he arrived was the birthday of Sri Gosaiji. When he arrived, Sri Gosaiji was inside the temple adorning the Lord. Sri Gosaiji completed the Gopi Vallabh Seva and then came out of the temple. Sri Gosaiji saw Brahmadas. He was happy and addressed him. "Oh, Brahmadas, I know that Srinathji told you to come here. Please bathe and quickly come back to me in the upper state of purity. I shall initiate you then." Brahmadas was surprised to hear his words and thought to himself that Sri Gosaiji was certainly the Lord himself, because he already knew what was in his heart. He very quickly bathed and came back to the temple. The Raj Bhog offerings had just been accepted back as prasad. Sri Gosaiji initiated him with the Lord's name and Brahmasambandh. Brahmadas experienced Sri Gosaiji's appearance and sang this pad. Pad Rag Dhanashri. Today is a celebration. A son has come to Sri Vallabh's house. The dol, the maru and bhedi drums all ring out the rhythm to congratulate Sri Akkaji on her son's birth. Sri Sukhdevji and Sri Vyasadev are overjoyed that such a glorious boy has appeared, who will examine the Srimad Bhagavatam. Glorious is Govardhan, blessed are the banks of Sri Yamunaji, for now he will reside splendidly in Sri Gokul. All the beautiful gopis give their best blessings. Long live this boy who pleases the devotees' hearts. When they gaze upon this great ocean of bliss, the Vraja devotees are filled with joy. The poet Brahmadas attends the scene, singing and dancing. Sri Gosaiji was so pleased to hear this pad and said, "Now you have truly understood this path." From that day onwards, Brahmadas's inner heart was always full of the bliss of his mental seva and wandered around the Vraja land. He experienced all the Lord's pastimes inside his heart. Such was the grace of Sri Gosaiji upon Brahmadas. Brahmadas was residing in Gopalpur. Part 1. Brahmadas was residing in Gopalpur. He used to wander around Vraj. His mind and heart were constantly absorbed in the Lord's seva. Sri Gosaiji's grace had let him perfect this mode of mental seva. In Manasi Ganga lived one man from the Gaudiya lineage, a disciple of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. He was Brahmadas's friend. He also always served the Lord in his mind and heart and only drank milk. After some time he began to survive solely on buttermilk and gave up drinking milk. One day that Gaudiya devotee mentally offered milk to Sri Thakurji in the Manasi Ganga lake. He also mentally accepted that offered milk as prasad. Then came the time when he would regularly drink his buttermilk, but he did not drink it. A disciple of his pressed him to drink some buttermilk, after which he went down with a fever. Brahmadas arrived there at that time. He said, "You drank buttermilk on top of milk. That is why you have a fever." The Gaudiya Das disciple piped up, "He did not drink any milk." The Gaudiya said to his disciple, "What would you know about it? Brahmadas always resides in the abode where I drank the milk. He saw me drinking the milk there." Prakash. The moral of this story is that those who have perfected the mental seva or inner worship of the Lord can perceive everything about everybody. This Manasi seva is the supreme form of seva. Vaishnavas should always be absorbed in their service to the divine beloveds within their hearts and minds. Thus concludes Varta 236, the story of Brahmadas, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnav. Through the strength of his heartfelt inner worship, he was able to see inside everyone's hearts. He wrote many compositions to be sung, expressing the experiences he had through such Manasi seva. He was a dedicated Vaishnava, and there is no end to his tale. Concluding the readings for today. आज के आनंद कीजिए, सब वैष्णवों को सदैन्य, सप्रेम, सानंद। जय श्री कृष्ण, जय जय श्री राधे।